Everybody wants to see one.
There's plenty of people doing that. We are doing something different.
Yeah.
We're doing something distinct. We're doing something unlawful.
Right.
Someone should stop us.
It should be stopped as quickly as possible.
Yeah, I think it should be. It should be stopped.
Welcome to the edge of nowhere. Monster Lore Tour Podcast.
All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to this 43rd episode of the Monster Lore Tour Paranormal Deep Dives from the Edge of Nowhere podcast. I'm your host, Jeremy Carr, here along with my co-host in the Captain Hook to my Mr. Smee, Mr. Matt Ozero, a.k.a. the Moz. How we doing today, Moz?
You didn't want to do the...
Or should I say, Arr, Captain.
Yeah, there you go. You didn't want to do like the Ahab to my Ishmael? Or...
Well, I was thinking crocodiles.
Oh, that's right. We're doing crocs.
And every time
that's better.
Yeah, every time I think of crocodiles, I think of the ticking clock.
Smee. Yeah.
Yeah, the ticking clock that's chasing Captain Hook around.
Smee too.
Smee too. No,
Yeah.
I'm Smee. I'm
Yeah.
Smee.
No, well, let's not lose a hand on this mission, though.
That would be good.
Yeah.
That would be good. But Moz is going to be deep diving us into the world of shape-shifting crocodiles today.
Yeah.
A couple points of old business to do first, but let's do the regular business even before that. If you have a second, hit those happy little fun buttons on whatever platform you're on. Like, share, subscribe. Maybe leave us a rating and review as we go here. Let us know how we're doing. Let us know how you like it. Always appreciate the time you take, and it's very helpful to see people responding like that.
It's very helpful.
It's very Yelpful.
Yeah.
I don't think we're on Yelp.
Well,
Is Yelp still a thing?
I did a Yelp review for us. It was I wasn't kind.
I haven't used Yelp in years.
Yeah.
Anywho, so old business. I have a couple points from the previous Animal Rain episode. I did kind of botch my Ahu Guano theory with the portals. I missed a very key point that was supposed to be in there, so I'm going to bring it back up. For anyone who listened to it, the thunderstorm thing, how the frogs and fish and whatnot tend to come with the thunderstorms. Part of my theory was supposed to be that portals opening up can actually cause weather events like that, like we discussed in the Bat Squatch episode. So I'll leave it at
mist
that.
can form, and the different
Yeah.
temperatures and it can change the weather if there's really something opening.
Exactly. It opens up and there's a big blast of hot air hits the cold air in the upper atmosphere. All of a sudden, a giant thunderstorm forms.
Yeah, a frog soon.
And a few million frogs fall out of the portal into the storm.
Yeah.
You know, it was a key part of the theory.
Well,
So
there'll be no trouble
I
at all.
apologize. I dropped it on that one, but that thing went deeper than I expected in the theory section, so I was a little thrown. And other one from Animal Rain I have, you mentioned in connection to a gelatinous blob rain in France in 1669. You said maybe it had something to do with them cleaning out the castle for the Countess of Blood.
Yes, Elizabeth
Bathory. Bathory from Hungary.
Yeah.
She actually died 55 years before that in 1614. So if it really did take them 55 years to clean out the castle, maybe it's kind of obvious that it would be raining gooey fungi across Europe.
That blood has been sitting around that castle. It could have congealed by then.
Yeah.
In 1614, we took a little trip.
Put another check on the wild theories for Moz there.
There you go.
You know, at least fun to think about.
Yeah. I don't know if I want to start back on Crazyville, but okay.
There you go. Oh, it's going to get crazy.
This one's going to get deeply ontological.
There you go. I'm going to pass it over to you. That's all. Do you have any old business or anything you want to?
I do not. I'm ready to rock and roll on this one.
Let's crocodile rocket, baby.
Yeah. Because tonight we're heading to Africa and actually discussing the Bebelibe stone shrine entities that shapeshift into crocodiles. Well, in their honor, we have to start off with an Elton John quote. Yeah. That's it.
Yeah.
That's it. That's the apex. That's the apex. We will be mostly hanging with the Bebelibe of northwestern Benin Africa today on this spooky journey through the darkest of continents. But first, I like to do the little mythosy thing for Crocs. Living in large or Titanic toast, for example. Living in large, crocodile-wise, the current record holder is Lolong, caught September of 2011. 21-foot saltwater crocodile was apprehended in the Philippines, is currently in captivity. How you capture something like that big and is now alive somewhere.
A 21-foot-long crocodile?
Yes, it's the winner, and I think the people who wrangled that thing deserve our first Mad Cujos.
Oh, wow, that's an early Mad Cujos. Yeah. Mad Cujos to the croc wranglers.
Down, boy!
That is 2/3 of the length of the average Megalania or Jaws. I think they deserve a little Mad Cujos.
Yeah, like
for
it's
that.
not the old school dinosaur style, but
Yeah.
it's getting there. It's definitely getting there.
And according to Guinness, we have the Sarcosuchus imperator, was a prehistoric species of crocodile, lived around 110 million years ago in the mid-Cretaceous. Fossilized remains found in the Sahara Desert suggest that the creature was around 50 to 60 years. It took 50 or 60 years, rather, to grow to its full length of 11 to 12 meters.
11 to 12, so 35-ish
36
feet.
feet, yeah. Something
Call
like
it
that.
35-ish feet.
35-ish feet. There you go. You're better at math. We've
Well,
established
just to put it in
that.
the middle of the range. You know?
There you go. Don't put it in the middle of the range. I think you should,
Oh, well, so what'd you say it was, how many meters?
11 to 12.
So it'd be
37 to 40 feet.
12 times 40 feet. Yeah, there
Yeah.
you go. 40 feet at the high end.
I'm just reading what it says next. 37 to 40 feet. So I'm cheating a little bit.
Oh, okay. There you go. I was close.
But no one knows the biggest
I got
one.
the 40.
The thing we always talk about is you never know the biggest one for sure. This is the one they have. This is the one the fossil
Right.
record that we have. We go with the fossil record we have, not the fossil record we may want.
Right.
In Cryptoville.
And it is kind of a fallacy in the science of it because the ones you have are most likely not the outliers.
Right.
That's probably an average.
Right.
So the biggest one was probably more like 50 feet.
Maybe.
The actual biggest one.
Maybe. But our guides tonight for this fabulous anthropological adventure we're going on into crocodile shapeshifting. By deep diving, these anthropologists kind of live with the Bebelibe culture, and they even went deeper into the ontological penumbra. We're going to learn what the heck that means. That's the twilight area between cultures.
Yeah, I know.
Where monsters dwell. So sit tight, don't dangle any extremities over the edge of the boat for this one, because we do want to get you out of there safe.
Your fingers look like worms.
Yeah, basically. Well, we do want to just be responsible, so we can't be responsible for any injuries, really.
Fair enough.
We just can't be responsible at all, is my
Yeah.
feeling about things, because it's stupid,
Yeah.
But anyway.
Beware the rocks. That's a little forewarning there, foreshadowing.
Yeah. It gets incredibly strange. This was an adventure. It's a 300-page study that we're going to be discussing tonight. But first, I always have to do a little global mythos, get you a little flavor of the crocodile, a little butter and garlic sauce. Not actually, that's too Wolfman Pucky already.
I prefer rattlesnake to crocodile.
There you go. But we're not actually searching for the largest croc today. We're searching for the shape-shifting variety, the Were-Crocodile. I have to do the creature feature.
Were-Crocs.
Exactly.
Love it.
Yeah.
I wear Crocs all the time.
Yeah, I don't doubt that. You're a hippie.
Sometimes socks.
Yep. Oh, you Crocs and sock
Excuse me.
Don't croc and sock me this
Sorry.
But there is a reptilian style aliens. There's lizard people. All that hopefully we're going to be covering at some other juncture. I just want to get through a little brief crocodile overview. First, we're going to start with Cavendish's Black Arts, the tarot perspective, what it means symbolically. It basically means that crocodile is one of those creatures of liminality between dry land and flowing water. So he compares it to the deeper plane of existence from the tarot perspective.
Oh, okay. That makes sense, actually. The lizard brain and the going down into the deep and stuff, the dark depths in the lizard brain.
I think the frog is more of that, and it's because that's not the only creature. That's kind of a liminal, symbolic designation kind of thing. And we're going to talk about that with frog monsters because they generally are the ones you talk about, but it's more about between land and water.
Oh, the amphibious nature of it.
Yeah.
More than going down into the darkness.
Yes,
Gotcha,
exactly.
the amphibious nature. Okay.
Exactly.
Living on the edge.
And urban legend-wise, we have these, of course, the crocodiles that live in the sewers. There's a monster quest on it, Supercrocs Stalk the Earth, Season 3, Episode 17, which says that they can live theoretically as far north as Manhattan, so that it is feasible
Really?
they live under there. Well, that's what the expert they had on was making the argument that you can make the argument.
Okay.
So
are they actually living in
they hadn't find
the
anything.
Bridgewater Triangle?
Yeah, they also have crocodiles sightings in the Bridgewater Triangle, which is just a little further north than that.
Yeah.
Exactly. Global crocodile mythos roll call. Let's get to it. Dreamtime, basically we've got some Australia stuff. We have a giant crocodile-like creature named the Kuria, Kurrea, which I found in Teresa Bain's bestiary. Basically was bested by a warrior named Tulula. And depending on the description of the bunyip, if you stay in Australia here, it has a little crocodile going on. It hangs at the edge of the water, waiting to pounce, and in some accounts, it has kind of a reptilian, crocodilian type head. Depictions really vary with the bunyip.
Interesting.
But I thought it was worth mentioning. The Kurits, which I also found in Bain's bestiary, comes from the Moro tradition. It's a crocodile-like, but bigger with impenetrable skin. This one moves as well on land and water. And I smell a shapeshifter because it's from the Philippines. And I just studied the Philippine folklore, and everything's a shapeshifter.
Oh, everything over there, yeah.
Yeah, so we're going to get to that soon enough.
That's very dragony, too. A crocodile with impenetrable skin.
Yeah.
That's very dragonish.
Yes. And then in Nepal, we have the Makara, head of a crocodile, trunk of an elephant, snake-leg, body, and antlers.
Oh, love it.
Very chimeric-y.
I want to see a picture of that. That's wild.
They have adorned the walls and temples. It's kind of like one of their nice things to paint on things. So if you see the Makara, you're going to see something really kind of another guardian, portal guardian kind of creature.
Wow, okay.
Mayans have the Zipacna, alligator of Mayan mythology, whose name means caiman or alligator. He was a bit of a badass until the warrior twins tricked him and trapped him under a rock, kind of lured him with a giant crab. It was a fake crab. It was like a hologram of a crab they created and lured. It's a very interesting story.
A thought form crab?
I think it's the origin of imitation crab meat is more where I was going with that.
So crab with a K.
Crab, yeah. It's not Plato's crab at all. But in Egypt, we have this Sobek, of course, god of strength and power, crocodile head. We also have Ammit, the devourer of the dead, or soul eater. Ammit, when Thoth weighs your heart against the feather. If you fail, Ammit's the crocodile that eats you. There's also a guardian of Egyptian underworld in crocodile form known as Ab-Esh-Imiduat. She herds souls who try to wander away from the seventh section of Tuat, or hell. I found the Taze. Rosemary Ellen Guiley's demonology book has the Taze, which comes from Burmese folklore, that produces a mild electronic shock through two chords. That's different.
Oh, you had me going right there for a second.
No, they enter the body of their favorite beasties, namely crocodiles, tigers, and dogs, to possess and attack people. They also pop up alongside dying people just to crack jokes. Seriously.
Yikes.
They're just in the dick section of your grimoire, basically.
I could see myself doing that as a ghost.
Oh, that's
just
awful.
Popping in and being like, "You ready?"
No, that's okay. You're encouraging. You would encourage.
It would be more encouraging.
You would be more encouraging.
Yeah, it would be more encouraging.
You'd tell jokes like, "We'll get through this." This guy just is making fun of you, like, ha ha. It's like a Nelson-y thing, like when Bart's dying. It's kind of like that.
I wonder if they let you be a guiding spirit like that when you die if you sign up.
Yeah.
Be like, I'll go wrangle them for you if you want.
Yeah,
I'm a taxi driver, man. It's what I do,
Yeah, you're already the ferryman.
I'd just be giving, I want to keep doing that forever.
There you go. I think there's probably...
My favorite thing is talking to strangers.
There you go. We're going to go over here. We're going to go over the little river Styx now. It's going to be fine. Yeah. But there are 4 hordes of evil deadites of these tasers. It's Tay-Tays, Tabor-Tays. One is a giant. One is a woman who died in childbirth. Rosemary Ellen Guiley also mentions these demons who ride on crocodiles. So that theme shows up, kind of time and time again. There's Salios, a fallen angel who is a duke who appears to warriors while riding a crocodile. He governs 30 legions of demons for a side hustle.
That's a lot of demons.
Yeah, and also from Guile, I found Agaris, which appears to be riding a crocodile and governs 31 legions of demons just to piss Salius off. This crocodile's probably a little bigger too, I'm guessing. He teaches languages, causes earthquakes, and makes the earth spirits dance. I found other instances of mythical figures riding crocodiles, but I want to kind of shift to Shapeshifter. In Japanese mythology, I found Toyota Mahaim, an ocean dweller and the daughter of the deity of the sea, Watsutsumi. She marries a man named Hori. They are happily married for 3 years. She announces she's pregnant but does not want him to watch during childbirth. He peeks, and instead of seeing his wife, he sees an enormous wani, or crocodile. His beloved is none other than Toyotama.
Oh, no way.
Yep.
She was the shape-shifting croc.
Yeah, because...
She had to take her real form to give birth.
Right, and because he looked, the story kind of goes downhill from there a little bit.
Yeah,
That's what happens.
That's a big lie,
Yep. And elsewhere in Japanese mythology, the crocodile is generally depicted as good. It helps the rabbit of Inaba, I-N-A-B-A. We've talked about that one before. Helps Hori no Kami escape from the island to return to the mainland to confront his brother. From fascinating indigenous Australian myths and legends, theculturetrip.com, I found, back to Australia, because I'm jumping around a little bit, shape-shifting woman Minawi. During a fight, a man rolled her around in the dirt, so she plotted her revenge, shape-shifted into a crocodile, waited for the same man to wade into the water, and gave him paybacks. And that's believed to be the origin of the death roll.
I was just going to say, by payback, does she mean death roll?
Did the death roll.
That's some good payback.
There you go. Up the ante a little bit.
Hell hath no fury, man.
But tonight's about crocodile shapeshifters from Africa, and I did find, as we start, I found their counterparts in South America. It makes me wonder when Pangea split up if, the family broke up at that point.
Yeah.
In Neil Whitehead's Dark Shaman, Kainama and the Dark Poetics of Death, I found a story of a family of crocodile shapeshifters. This brings us to our first reading for Jeremy about these dark shaman sisters of South America.
All right, this is titled The Story of Makona Ura and Anua Naitu. This compilation centers on the fortunes of Makona Ura and his wife, Anua Naitu, who is part of a sinister family headed by a man crocodile, her stepfather. This family murders Makona Ura, and so his relations prepare themselves for revenge as Kanaimas. Dance's Indian voice in this chapter also suggests that the whites have Kanaima as well, only that it is the retributive force of a society or government and not of a family, a comparison that serves to further enhance the idea of Kanaima's legalistic social status. Nonetheless, some of the exotic character of what would otherwise be reduced to a lex talionis is preserved by a definition of Kanaima as the spirit of revenge. This vengeful spiritual entity is then used by Dance to account for the other meanings found in the discourse of Kanaima, and in particular, the advent of premature death in a world that otherwise would see human life run a natural course of longevity. The story continues that following the agonistic Makwari dance that tests Makona Ura's uncle and nephew for the task of revenge, they depart as Kanaimas, nearly naked but painted and subsisting only on beltiri, cassava bread, for the village of the crocodile family.
This tale does end with the crocodile family being gunned down as an act of revenge. So they go out and they kind of revenge the death of Makona Ura.
Oh, because they go out as Kanaimas.
Yes.
Which is the spirit of revenge. So they death roll the death roller.
Right. And that's that word lex talionis there, or however you say it.
Talionis?
Yeah. You just kind of think crow. It's kind of the revenge spirit, like crow is the way I was thinking about that. But basically, when we talk about the Kanaima, and we talk about, again, that was from Neil Whitehead's work, dark shamans, and we're going to go more into that in another episode, I am sure, because I've found a lot of information on these, and it's deeply, deeply disturbing dark shamanistic evilness. These revenge spirits are.
The Kanaima, are they the Were-Jaguars?
They're more Were-Jaguar-y than Were-Croc.
There you go. Yeah, we've talked about them a little bit in private.
Yes. So finally arriving in Africa, though, we're going to let Brad Steiger kind of bring us over the threshold of this continent. From his Werewolves, the Encyclopedia of Shapeshifting, he gets us going for the African version of these Were-Crocodiles. The reason I mentioned the last one because it was a family of crocodile kinema, so they can have that is another, I think it's python and jaguar first over there as well, and crocodile might be a distant third.
Okay.
Now that we're in Africa, I have your second reading from Brad Steiger.
Oh, I'm going again already.
Yep.
Many African tribes believe that crocodiles host the soul of murder victims who have returned to seek revenge. These tormented spirits may assume a limited human form or may shapeshift between reptile and human. A more common belief is that the crocodiles are themselves the present incarnation of tribal ancestors. Propitiation may be offered to the large reptiles to ensure their benevolent guidance, rather than their disgust or animosity with present generations of their tribe.
So that again from Brad Steiger, the Werewolf book, Encyclopedia of Shapeshifting Beings. Crocodiles as kind of guardians there. They're kind of seeing, and we're going to find out why they play such a key role in some of these African groups.
And it would kind of explain a lot of their behavior if they're full of vengeful spirits.
Yeah. Well, Steiger
Nasty
also
buggers.
points out, though, that there's a lot of beastly marriages in African folklore. So they do marry, they are part of the community, and that's what we're going to kind of get to here.
They still have that old animistic lore to them.
Yeah, we're going to get into totemism and animism a little bit on this one as well. It's not uncommon here on one of my episodes. But this brings us to Sharon Merz, who worked closely with her husband Johannes out in the field where they fought for their meals. They worked directly with the Bebelibe crocodile, and this is the main study. Crocodiles are the soul of the community, an analysis of human-animal relations in northwestern Benin from the University of Exeter. And it also brings us to our real and heroes of this, the Mad Cujos, to the Merzes.
Mad Cujos.
Down boy!
Actually, anthropologist-wise, yes, Sharon Merz, it's her paper, and Johannes Merz made some of the really cool philosophical concepts that we're going to be discussing to kind of deal with. You're going to see why it's so confusing and why they had to kind of step outside of the box in the normal ring of anthropology to figure out what was happening, which is where we always end up, right? With those folks on the edge, willing to really look a little deeper.
That's why we're paranormal deep dives from the edge of nowhere.
Yeah. I found that Sharon Merz's study to be really chock full of ontological shapeshiftery goodness. If I had to do a review, I think that's what I'd say.
Is it like the inside of a Twinkie?
Yeah, it's nougaty. It's definitely some nougat in there.
Some Three Musketeers.
That's the way I felt about it.
Noise.
But the thesis begins with the Merzes being notified of a friend's death, Emile, a baker they knew from their anthropological work in Benin, West Africa. The backstory is this. He sees a crocodile in a drainage channel a bit too close to his cafe for comfort, so he calls on a rifleman to shoot it, Chuck Connors. This upsets a village teenager, we will see why soon enough, who tries to rally some folks to stop this event. But he's too late. The boy arrives with help, but the crocodile's already dead.
People just want to shoot stuff.
Yeah.
It's like the Gloucester sea serpent.
But in this area...
They were like, hey, let's go shoot it.
In this area, that's a big no-no. Shortly after the incident...
Yeah, that's the ancestors, man.
You already get it.
Yeah.
He lives there. Now, this is their friend, and he died, and we don't want to be disrespectful, but I agree with you. Like, he, in some ways, he really... And again...
It's like why they don't kill cows in India.
I don't want to jump ahead, but in some ways it's because Christianity changed some of the beliefs of some of the people there, and then that just becomes an animal.
Yeah.
That's definitely part of this.
All of a sudden the human is superior instead of equal.
Right. Very good. But shortly after the incident, Emile is dead of an aneurysm, but is there more to his death?
Oh, wow, okay.
In this region, the Merzes cite Evans Pritchard's concept of, and this is my terminology, but ultimate and secondary reason for a tribal member's demise. The secondary reason, or the how, in this example, is the sudden aneurysm, but the why ultimate reason is believed to be his killing of this crocodile, which in this case of the Bebelibe is a major totem of the village, not a wild creature, but a Disida Cefa crocodile, which is a major no-no. It's the totem animal of the community, basically. We've seen variations of this theme before with the Inuits and the Orcas, Tlingits and the otters, Altians and the bears, the Hoikle and the wolves, reindeer herders. We had a whole episode on that.
Some reason that the Kustika, the Tlingits and the otters,
it's a different
that one
relationship.
Stuck with me. I love that episode.
It's a different relationship. It was definitely adversarial. This is the crocodile still entwined in the community, and the otters are more now, we're sick of your shit, and we're just going to
Right.
We're going to regroup and recruit when we want to, and we're going to mess with you when we want to, and we're going to turn some of you into us when it suits us. It's a different relationship with our
I think maybe totem. I have this dark dream of becoming one of the otters.
There you go.
Maybe that's why I like it so much. I just realized that.
Yeah, that's odder than you would think.
Self-truth is important.
Yeah. Do you have another totem potentially brewing in there?
Oh, yeah.
Maybe. But for the Bebelibe, you have 3 types of animals. Your average crocodile. This is where it gets a little weird. It gets even weirder, and then it gets truly weird. You have 3 types. You've got your average crocodile who's just interested in hanging out in the swamp and eating stuff. Then you have the family totem, which is the area's totem animal, which they believe the one Emil had shot was one of those. Then you have your personal totem, which you share this kabadika, animating force, and matakime, which includes mind, destiny, and behavior. So it's sharing parts of the soul. So it's really truly your totem animal, or your family totem, or it's just a crocodile, which maybe has no affiliation. It's just a wild animal. So there's 3 ways of looking at one type of beastie in your neighborhood.
Wow, okay.
Yeah, and it gets more complicated from there. But the Merzes lived with this tribe for several years and created some philosophical concepts to explain this deep way of being in the world, or as their totem. It's all very Heidegger meets Jane Goodall meets Supercroc 2, which is on Tubi, by the way. You have to see that.
Nice.
I'm just making that. I don't think that's a thing. And one person they interviewed for this research said, crocodiles are the souls of the community, which became the name of the paper. And as a neo-Jungian,
Neo-Jungian.
Oh, thank you. I always look for symbols, but the Merzes don't think that captures the essence of what's happening here with the Bebelibe and their totems. As usual, we have to, these different energies to deal with. Sharon Merz narrows the whole ontological package down to a group of relationships. This is a quote from her. Between totem entities, living kin, ancestors, and death cycle, which are needed to ensure social continuity. She speaks of an archaic bond or pact between prey and predator, hunted and hunter, a variation which echoes across the hunter-gatherer world. Joseph Campbell, for one, often speaks of this covenant made with animals who willingly give their life for sustenance. And the shaman sits in the middle of this dealio, this pact with we just saw it with the Banjakri, with these clan member heads and these monkeys and their hybrid children.
Yeah,
keep running across this stuff. And I think I know we're saying it a lot, but other people seem not to for whatever reason.
And again, it's the difference, when we were following that cycle where, everything fed each other.
Yeah.
And humans were equal with the animals.
Yeah, we're going to get to that. You're jumping ahead again.
Yeah.
That's what you do. But that's why we love you, That's why we keep you around. But there's an even deeper enmeshment here on a soul level. It's an interontic relationship, which we'll talk about, established between a founding ancestral member and an animal, the progenitors again. That's how we get these totem human hybrids, and there's this ongoing reincarnation cycle that brings the melded pair back into being over and over again. This agreement is a real until death do us part, but even beyond through reincarnation. Yeah. We have, in my thought experiment where I wondered if the Menahuna, if you remember that, the kahunas of Hawaii with the shaman and the Menahuna with the little people, I wondered how much transpired between them. I think if we really knew these oral traditions through the shamanic eye and what really happened, we're going to see more of these same type stories of dealios between fairy creatures, animal therianthropes, and original members of an area. Seems that way anyway.
Right. The human and animal blend so closely together that they could be the same thing.
Yeah, they're partners.
Yeah.
In the beginning, they made some kind of pacts and partnerships, and it's very, very odd to me. Here's Sharon Merz. Kirksey and Halmreich point out that humans have never been only human. Humanity is embedded in multi-species relationships. Morris adds that both humanity and personhood can only be understood in terms of a dialectical relationship with animals, a back and forth. Embedded multi-species relationships, though, Jeremy, does that remind you of anything?
My dog.
Well, beyond Junebug, we also talked about this episode, my episode 1 intro with Lynn Margulies's and the Cthulhu scene and the pantheologies. Yeah. This is that quote from episode 1. Basic units of biology ought not to be individuals, but rather holobionts, multi-species assemblages that are both more and less than one. All organisms are effectively chimeric. So it's that relationality all the way down.
Well, yeah, I mean, we're all just parts of one thing anyway, so...
Well, this is saying it's a gazillion things that's working together on a microcosm level, and that seems to maybe spill out into deals with mammals and other mammals.
It's the
it kept going.
It's the fractalization of existence. We can do that in the side trail. We're going to get into the deep stuff in the side trail, all right?
There you go.
I'm going to make a note of that for the side trail.
There you go. Hordes of marauding, competing, and uniting microorganisms. Where do they end? And where does the so-called individual begin? It's basically multi-species relationships, from bacteria to Beyonce, if you will, which I think is going to be the name of my new book, by the way. Bacteria to Beyonce.
I would buy a book with that title.
There you go. We may separate from the animals physically, this enmeshment of how we got here. I don't know where it begins, where it ends. Makes me wonder what deal our ancestors made with these animals. I mean, I think we're going to find more about this as we look, but for the Bebelibe, their elders or priests often speak with invisible parts of the world and visible parts of the world. The Behidebe, or dead ancestors, are part of this, or certain stones and rocks or shrine entities, Atada, which are also something that they communicate with. Somehow the Bebelibe and dictums or true totems share an aspect of each other's animating force. They can shift into their totem. The totem can shift into human. So a given shrine entity can go from rock to croc to human and back again. So a human can shapeshift into a croc. Yeah. We'll get into it.
Well, we've talked about it before where there's, the shapeshifters go both ways, where there are humans who can change into animal form, and there are animals who can change into human form. This isn't the first time we've seen that.
Yeah, like the were hyena is supposed to be one of those reversal ones. Some of these creatures that are more nature elements becoming people, and then there's shamans who become more of these were creatures. And what happens in this episode is that they have conversations and they know about each other, and they're more enmeshed in understanding that that's happening, and that's why it's so ontologically bonkers.
Yeah.
This is why it's presencing complex, as we will get to, as these different level of creatures interact with each other. If you turn from a rock to a croc and a human shifts, you can't even begin to understand what that communication might seem like. It's a very different way of kind of being in the world, I guess, is what we'll get to. But remember, back to Totem, 101, the Ojibwa had Otatoman. He is of my family. So this kinship is not new, but this deeper dealio is kind of mind-blowing a little bit. We keep finding these global similarities. For starters, according to the Merzes, this tribe believes animals are rational, sentient, and intelligent beings. They also have souls like humans and are not actually inferior. Another theme we keep coming across, James Frazier from the Golden Bow basically says pure totemism is essentially democratic, and that's what you were getting at earlier. You were jumping ahead a little bit.
Well, yeah, I mean, to me, anything that purposefully moves, seeks food, seeks reproduction, is conscious and thinks.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
How can they do those things if they aren't?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just looking at it from a different way.
Yeah.
You're looking at it from a different way. Which
To me, it's inherent that us and the animals are really essentially the same thing. We just have different ways of approaching the world.
Right. And different complexities, too, though, and that's where it gets to be really pantheologically dicey as far as hierarchies and stuff go, and that's a different conversation.
Right.
But a lot of these same food and ritual taboos show up all as well over Africa, as that we've seen over and over again. Akin to your it's basically the crocodiles are akin to the guardian angel. But so this is why you can't eat them. It's like if Jimmy Stewart were to eat Clarence on the bridge. Jeez, Mary, the Clarence is delicious with gravy.
He's so good.
But the paper includes, that's why you don't eat your totems. That's why you don't shoot your totem outside of the store.
That's why I don't eat bear.
There, exactly. The paper includes a great overview of totemism, by the way, points out how folks like Emile Durkheim, Claude Lévi-Strauss, Franz Boas, James Fraser, a lot of the heavy hitters, really didn't get deep enough into totemism, really understand it. It was kind of like monkeys with a gun in the beginning.
Yeah.
That's not what they say. This is my rendition of it.
I mean, that's kind of an extreme way of putting it, but I get your point.
But shamanism is withering away and totemism is withering away, and that's the other theme that the Merzes mentioned. That's what we seem to see everywhere. But the strict interpretation of totemism brings us to some rather deep shape-shifting folklore, because there's a link between the kabadika, human and crocodile sharing parts of the soul. There needs to be the test when a child is born to determine the reincarnation and the totem animal involved, because you need to know what's up for safety reasons, because if the totem dies, the person dies. If you're enmeshed with a crocodile soul and it dies, you die.
There's that quantum entanglement again.
Right. And the taboos are even stricter in some ways. For example, if someone with a crocodile totem even sees a dead crocodile or swims where a crocodile has died, it could sicken and kill the individual.
Even like passively just where crocodile died?
Usually you have to eat it before you die. That will kill you here too. But this one is even more strict that
Wow.
And again, it's that deeper, it's more enmeshed. It seems to be even a stricter ruling. So it's odd. So before you go, it's best to know. The main type of shapeshifters there's bush animals that people consider especially powerful and dangerous, and includes the buffalo and the bush buck, which is an antelope, a red-flanked duiker, which is a different type of antelope, leopards, and wild ass or feral donkeys, which people fear the most, as we shall see.
Those wild donkeys are mean.
Well, they don't have wild donkeys here, but that's what the word means, and there's part of the interview is trying to figure that out. We're going to get to that. But why is wild donkeys such a bad ass, so to speak? And we're going to find out.
A wild ass.
Yeah.
But they don't actually have them there, you said?
Yeah, they had to show. Yeah, they interviewed people. They had to show pictures, and they're trying to. It's a French word that came into the thing, and it became one of the unknowns as what they're actually experiencing or seeing. But it definitely seems as it's a horse type creature, and what it exactly is, is open to interpretation.
Interesting. Okay.
I also came across.
It's almost like a cryptid waiting to happen right there.
Yeah. I also came across paddis monkeys and warthog shapeshifters in this thesis. But the most common family totem in the tribe is either the python or the crocodile. Again, the feral donkey is the most dangerous because they're kind of unaffiliated and they hold a grudge, and they're good at taking human form. So you never know if you mess with one, what's gonna happen next.
Yeah.
Here's a totem taboo conundrum story that will bring it home for you. A mule is badly injured and really just needs to be put down, but no one can bring themselves to do it out of fear of the possible consequences of such an act.
Oh, because it's going to come back and get you in the next rotation, so to speak.
So this is Sharon Merz from the study. Quote, I realized that they were afraid. I later learned that the members of the Aquida family are considered extremely powerful and are accorded quasi-human status. Consequently, to kill an Aquida family member without just cause is tantamount to murder, and there is the danger that the animal concerned will seek revenge. Those present, Those present thought it better to let the mule die naturally than to be implicated in its death.
Yeah, I don't blame them in this case. I mean, if it's suffering, you kind of want to put the thing out of its misery. I get that, but if it means it's going to come back and get you as a crocodile or whatever form it may take,
well, it could come back. Yeah, it comes back.
Or even if it's
as
just the spirit comes back and gets
It's a vengeful spirit again
Yeah.
that comes back. And sometimes it just goes for a family member.
I'm not messing with that either, man. No way.
But the only person who has the authority over a given donkey is the appointed guardian. If you infringe on a donkey's rights, it may hunt you down, go back to the hunter's home in human form to question a family member. And if they fail this test, the family member is murdered by the shape-shifting mule.
Wow.
The mule in this case is called the Kamunaka, animal in human form. During one interview, Sharon Merz showed images of a wild donkey. This is what I was talking about to interviewees. But it's not indigenous to the area, so there was a lot of kind of varied results. But the Kamunaka has a French root and means wild donkey. But after the interview process, the actual culprit, antelope, feral donkey, or wild ass, remained elusive, as there were some various and conflicting reports again. Yeah. There are also other human souls mixed into these agreements, and the Merzes uncovered that. It's kind of a Rumpelstiltskin-y thing, which we see. Power within these ancestral spirits lies within their anonymity. Once named, the ancestral spirit flees, thus abandoning the individual, tearing apart the unbreakable bond, I guess it's breakable, between the Kabodika and killing the human counterparts. A part of your soul, once it's named, leaves you and you die like that. You could be reincarnated together more than likely.
Well, you say it's breakable, but only breakable by death.
Yeah.
So kind of unbreakable.
And
unbreakable in this life.
And they reincarnate together again, usually.
Yeah.
So,
well, that's because you're entangled, right?
Yes.
This is very quantum.
Yep. I have seen variations of this theme pop up in different tribes of the Philippines as well. Here's some Bebelibe totem mythos to paint us a picture here. The Merzes uncovered several common themes within the legends and origin myths of this tribal group. For one, the totem entity helps or saves a founding ancestral member or a prominent citizen. So back in the day, Crocodile saves Bobby, who's a big leader in the group, and all of a sudden now they're our friends. So basically there's this, they become the true totem and dictum basically through this, act of kindness that saves an early member of the tribe.
Sure.
Second common theme, the totem animal was hunted and killed. Meat was shared, but the villagers during the feast realize this is human flesh.
Oh.
So they understand that we're enmeshed with them, and these are animals we cannot eat.
You realize that's
Like
two episodes in a row where we have potential accidental cannibalism.
Yeah, we could have just
Two in a
made
row.
an episode called Accidental Cannibalism.
Maybe we will in season 5.
Ah.
We'll bring back these couple of.
Can I stop this project now? Can we do
that? And I'm out.
And I'm out.
You actually haven't quit in a while. You used to quit every episode.
I know.
That's the first time you've quit in a while.
I'm having fun. I will quit, though, but not today. Perhaps, but not today.
Not today.
But last mythos of the common theme variety, they discover the ancestors were their totem animals who can become fully human. So the shapeshiftery piece of it is also at the core of the origin mythos. So it's about the crocodile quasi-human thing or important mythical figure thing and these pacts that happen. And so, Jeremy, could you read, without hating on me, I tried to take out a lot of the Bebelibe words for you, but we do have a Sharon Merz special here right from the study, How Our Ancestors Became Fully Human. This gives you an overview of the mythos of the region.
Okay. Yeah, after all your Arctic shapeshifter type stuff, I'm not really scared to try to pronounce things anymore, even though I'm still probably wrong most of the time. Anywho, title of this one is How Our Ancestor Became Fully Human. In the beginning, our ancestor lived in a hole in the plains near Kobli town. He then left the hole and came in to live in Kobli. He was a seer and could become a crocodile, which allowed him to live in harmony with nature. During the night, he would change back into a man, sneak into people's homesteads, and eat their leftovers. The local inhabitants didn't know who was doing this. One day, a seer went to visit his older brother, who was from another community. The seer discovered that our ancestor could body shift between a crocodile and a man, and that he was the one eating people's leftovers. That's really funny. He told his older brother, and they went to find our ancestor. Now, you need to know that even when he was a man, he always had a crocodile tail. That's a big tell. When the other two men found him, they cut off his tail, and consequently, our ancestor became a normal human. He then constructed a house on sand, hence our name, Bebelibe, sand people. Utidi. Since that time, he refused to eat crocodile meat. Otherwise, it would be as if he was eating his own flesh. And this is why we have the crocodile as our totem. Oh, so we can't eat crocodile because we are crocodile.
Right. So you're eating an ancestral spirit, like we talked about, and you captured the telltale tale part of it. You captured that. You got in a Star Wars reference very sneakily. You did your bit. Yeah, that's what you did with the sand people there. That's what you do when I leave you unsupervised. But again, the Merzes weren't happy with the common anthropological approach to explanations. They had to dig deeper to understand what was really happening here. Here's a quote within a quote from the Merz study from A. Hanar et al. Study. Anthropological analysis has little to do with trying to determine how other people think about the world, has to do with how we must think in order to conceive a world the way they do. I think that sentiment is kind of at the heart of why the Merzes had to be drawn deeper into the ontological penumbra, because they were able to look at things from a deeper perspective, more in tune with the people that they were interacting with. I think they did a service to our knowledge about the Bebelibe and shapeshifting and the worldview that surrounds it. Basically, ontologically, it does get more and more metaphysical. It does get into the study of being, so I just want to really quickly, Wikipedia, ontology, it investigates what types of entities exist, how they are grouped into categories, and how they are related to one another on the most fundamental level. It's why we have all these buckets. It's why I keep mentioning ontology. I didn't know when we started this, we're a year in,
right,
how much ontology was going to happen. That's why, because we're putting things into buckets, and why do we relate to these things in buckets, and are they real, are they not?
You started trying to figure out how everything is connected to everything else.
Yeah, that's U.S. telephone.
Yeah, that's why we had to start a 4-dimensional Venn diagram for this stuff.
Yeah, that's why we built a Tesseract, which is our podcast studio that we have to crawl into, and it's much bigger inside.
Much bigger.
Yeah, because his closet is really small in real life.
Yeah.
We are going to be doing one in a...
you should see what we've done with Maz's hermit cave. You crawl in through this little hole, and all of a sudden you're in this giant room. It's wild.
But human entities deal with other things in the monstrous neighborhood, real or imagined, and that's what we're dealing with today. The Merzes set up their philosophical base camp with the work of Philippe de Scola and his 4 ontologies, the ways of being in the world in relation to animals. It's animism, totemism, naturalism, and analogism, which de Scola breaks down as, again, this is from the Merz study, faced with some other entity, human or non-human, I can assume either that it possesses elements of physicality and interiority identical to my own, that's totemism, that both its interiority and physicality are distinct from mine, that's analogism, that we have similar interiorities, but we have different physicalities, and that's animism, or finally that our interiorities are different and our physicalities are analogous, that's naturalism. I know it's complicated. We'll break that down a little bit more at some point.
I'm going to listen to that 3 times when the episode comes out.
But easiest way to think of that last one, naturalism, is it's a denial of anything supernatural. Things obey natural laws. It's the Scully Muggle end of it. We're closer to totemism and animism here with what's going on in West Benin, but totemism didn't quite cut it for the Merzes, so they're actually kind of going totemism 2.0 is really, I guess, the best way to kind of think of that.
Beta version.
Yeah. Which if you dip Chuck Norris into Bon Jacquerie blood, that's kind of, to attack rabbits, that's kind of totemism 2.0 as well.
I don't know if I'd risk turning Chuck Norris into a werebear.
I don't think he could be any tougher than he is either. Yeah, you're right. You could make something so much. This could be like a Resident Evil moment.
It's kind of like the Incredible Hulk kind of factor
David
right there.
Banner and then he
like Chuck Norris as a bear could probably beat up the Hulk.
Well, Chuck Norris as David Banner, that's the good guy, and then he becomes a werebear.
Oh my God, they should totally make that show.
Okay.
But too much?
Well, the point being, for back to this part, is you can switch between totemic, ontonic, or animic relationships, which is Johannes Merz kind of creating this verbiage ontonic, which is built on ontology to describe what's happening here. We're going to talk about this a little bit. This, again, from the Merz study. This is the ontological penumbra, which I've said a couple times. I'm actually going to define that now.
Could I get a vodka on tonic, please?
Yeah. The shadowy spaces where people find themselves in limbo, which they need to negotiate as part of making sense of their engagement with the world. I also examine the onton as introduced by J. Merz, which is core to these theoretical frameworks. Ontons are experiential, agentative, and relational entities that are the result of presencing processes. Ontons, however, cannot be divided into representation signifiers and represented signified as signs can. It's a true enmeshment. The ontonic piece of it is basically, again, that you're dealing with something that thinks it's two things. So being is really attacked at the core of being, which is kind of what, Heidegger wrote that whole book about.
It's a very duality of man thing. It is very philosophical.
Yeah, you can't get away from it, which is why they couldn't get away from it, had to create stuff. But the presencing process is, again, how we would relate I guess we'll get to that. I don't want to jump too far ahead. But they realized at some point interviewees were contradicting themselves with all these relationships between themselves and these beings from what they call the less visible parts of the world. So basically it's the same part of the world that I'm studying in Filipino folklore right now, and it's there are some similarities which we'll get into at some point. But the Merz interview, one question that muddled things up real good was, did animals have the ability to reason? At first they didn't know what makes,
yes,
but when you're presencing in different ways, that gets to be a very complicated question, because if you're dealing with just a crocodile in the river, it can't. If it's a crocodile ancestor spirit, it can. And people were answering depending on what they were dealing with, and that's what became the confusing part, and that's kind of why the Merzes had to create these cool philosophical.
So they don't think that all crocodiles are capable of that mental acuity.
They could be capable, but some of them are at the moment are just crocodiles as we understand them, reptiles. Other ones are enmeshed with a soul of an ancestral spirit or another member of the community. Could be a Were-Croc, a more of a shamanistic person transforming into a crocodile. More than likely, it's this Acefe version where it's a totemistic ancestral spirit that, again, if you harm or eat, has consequences.
Yeah.
There's a lot of moving parts regarding these entity relationships, which incorporate cultural context, primal energies, family totems, all meeting and engaging with one another as different forms, this presencing piece. So they're trying to share very complex interactions with kabodika, animating force, and aspects of identity, metekime, mind, destiny, and behavior. So presencing, that's where Martin Heidegger also kind of comes in a little bit. He's an authority on all things ontological. Here's Heidegger. Entities are grasped in the being as presence. This means that they are understood with regard to a definite mode of time, the present, thus they are conceived as presence. So you have this time element, you have this moment of two beings being there and presencing with one another, and how that relationship looks is very different when you're dealing with some of these entities.
That goes back to something, where did we talk about that? The side trail for Animal Rain, I think. How time actually exists as a whole, and all moments exist equally at the same time, and everything just happens now.
Right, but for this...
That's what that was getting into right there.
But this is a moment of these two beings that are different and on a different perspective in the same moment interacting.
And it's not just a spatial thing, knowing where they are. They have to know when they are.
Right. Yep.
When they have those moments. That's interesting.
Yep. And as for the ontonic relationship, Sharon Merz offers Holy Communion as an example. The bread and wine become the flesh and blood of Christ. Therefore, the two elements are presenced as ontons. You have different relationships to and with a wafer and a fermented grape, intertwined with the Messiah. So it's very different than just a regular wine and a regular cracker.
Yeah.
So if you want to talk about if your lime is your indictum or true totem is a juniper berry, that's a gin on tonic relationship.
There it is.
There's a package.
And I was asking for vodka.
I know,
Silly me.
You didn't wait for the right joke.
No, I did not.
But there's a package of things, signs and symbols that speak to function. The Merzes add ontons to this semiotic signs and symbols to clarify and further explore these various interactions. Anyway, it's how we get to my sci-fi example, if you remember the Jadzia Dax from Deep Space Nine. Remember, we used her as an example when I first floated this idea, sharing aspects of consciousness and self. But even Jadzia Dax is an exact match for this. Sure, the symbiont and the host join consciousness to become a trill, but their Kabadeka and Matakeme will not reincarnate together, and they are different interior physicalities as well that merge into oneness as one consciousness. But it's still a variation of an ontic engagement, the closest I could muster from the science fiction realm.
And when one dies, the other dies, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, shortly thereafter.
They have that deep entanglement.
Well, actually, that's not true. You can take the trill out and you can have another host. So it isn't really, you're not combined, okay. You're combining for a time being, but there's definitely a separation between the alien and the human. It's not exactly the ontonic relationship of the West Benin Africa. It's not as entwined and as entangled.
They just usually wait for the physical host to die before they move the spirit.
On. Yeah. Yep.
But the spirit continues.
Yeah. Because there is a way to get out of that. If things go horribly wrong in a lifetime, you can actually break up with it and not reincarnate together. So there are options, but it's still one step closer to a Bradgelina kind of thing or a Jadzia Daxi kind of thing. I know it's crazy complicated, doing the best I can. But the ontological penumbra is stepping between cultures into the shadowy realm, at least in part by checking our assumptions, biases, and bigotries at the door. This is why the Merzes had to kind of step one step closer to Were-Crocodiles as a thing, instead of just poo-pooing it or trying to do what other totemism folks did in the past and write about it and not really understand it. They wanted to get one step closer. So they stepped into the ontological penumbra between cultures. And they, came back, I think, with some very interesting answers. This notion in part echoes of monster theory because in-between cultures is reminiscent of old in-between states where monsters tend to dwell. In this case, it's between philosophical concepts as well as cultures. So they understand these complex shapeshifters and how they relate to each other in various forms, but you have to hover in between from an ontological perspective.
That's where it all happens where the realms are overlapping here with the physical and the spiritual, or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah. They call it the ontological penumbra, or they use that term. I prefer epistemological taint. Cast your vote at mlt@gmail.com.
Taint.
Yeah. Well, I just think it's a better word, but hey, we all have our preferences. But here's the real reason you're here, really getting into the shape-shifting piece. Come for the Were-Crocodiles here at MLT, but stay for the liminal ontological discussions. But the following insight into shape
shifters
comes from the Merz's interviews with these folks. That worked. I wasn't sure that was going to work.
I didn't know we did it with that word.
We did. We do now. But this is back to the Merz's. I'll take this one. Using the analogy of a clothed body, Joel, a 30-year-old farmer, summarized how he understood the relationship between peoples, Tikante, Kabodika, and Matekama. He explained that when you see people walking, you see them dressed in shirts and trousers. Their bodies are hidden under these clothes. The clothes that you see are the people's Tikante, which they can change, whereas the body underneath the clothes, the Kabadika, or Matakame, which cannot be separated. People and other beings can change bodies temporarily when they shapeshift, and permanently following death when they reincarnate. Kabadika and Matakime, however, do not occupy the body as such but infuse it. Thus, beings are simultaneously and inseparably material and immaterial. They are transmaterial. For virtually, and this is a ... moment, for virtually all Bebelibe, should something happen in these less visible parts of the world that prevents the Kabodika from returning if caught by a witch, for example. The beings Ukwenwe will eventually die, and that's their body skin. As mentioned above, some beings such as the Siawayasi, bush beings, and the Atade, stone entities, can have more than one Ukwenwe that share the same Kobadika and Matakame. So again, that's the identity and the animating force. Some of these Tekante exist primarily in the less visible parts of the world and are only apparent to those who can see in these parts of the world whilst being awake, such as diviners or seers, or as we normally call them, shaman.
Shaman, right.
But the Tekante is basically the plural for the skins. I use this one as UKU backwards CNU, which is body skin. But I use Tekante a lot more because that's like body skins, because they can actually, that's the whole wardrobe. So you can kind of change that
and
piece of it.
It's interesting. You can only have one of each of the outer layers, but when you get down deep enough, there can be more than one. It's that chimeric thing again.
Yeah, you can have more outer layers, but there's also more going on inside. There's multiple. So there's multiple skins, there's multiple entities within, there's multiple entities without. It reminded me of how the Tlingits kind of had a different view of where the body ends, again, where the visceral organs and the soul were attached, but the skin could be changed.
Well, some of them think that the flesh is part of you, and others think the flesh is totally replaceable, malleable. That's a shamanic thing. They render the flesh and replace it. It's like clay.
Yes. That which we call sham by any other name, basically. You know, I found it mind-boggling. Oh, and I found
There's a lot of overlap in that with a lot of other belief systems, though.
Yes.
It's not that far outside the typical, like mythos box for global culture.
Because they looked closer and because there's more enmeshments, it became more complicated. It may not be its own thing. It's just because they went there, it became more complicated.
Right. The foundation is the same. Mm-hmm. They built a very different sort of building on the foundation, but the foundation is the same.
Yeah. I found a cool way to think about this with the show Grimm again. The Vessen can vulga or transform, which normally only other Vessen can see. Vessen are basically the therianthropes. They're werewolves. They're different creature-y kind of things that can shift. But they can also vulga and show non-Vessen, ordinary humans, the transformation. It's up to them. As Monroe says, this is where much of your folklore comes from. The Vessens are presencing in various ways, and which is kind of the same thing we're talking about. Mm-hmm. Having watched the show, though, it seemed really real to me, Jeremy. They could change their faces in animals. Explain that.
It's CGI, Moss. It's TV.
It's CG and I guess. But there are Grimm's rare beings who can see all Vessens when they vulga, when they want to be seen or not. That's what makes the hero this Grimm, and it's so dangerous to the Vessen because they can be identified. But most ordinary people can only see the Vessen shapeshift when they want to be seen. But there are humans, ordinary humans, who at least know about the existence of Vessens. They're the Kehrseite. I know. It's getting the same.
So they can't see them?
They can't see them, but they know of their existence somehow. Because maybe one showed them, and then they get a sense of that these things exist, and then they find out that one's one of them. So it's the Kehrseite, as an ordinary human, not a Grimm, but someone that knows they exist and maybe knows that Bob the grocer is a Blukbot,
Yeah.
So it's one of those things.
This is like Roddy Piper and They Live. Is that what it was called?
Yeah. They Live. Yeah. John
Carpenter. The Grimms have the glasses.
The Grimms have the glasses.
Yeah.
Very rowdy Roddy Piper view.
That's a great movie, dude.
I've already written a Hell Comes to Frogtown joke for the frog episode.
Nice.
I can't say it now because we're not in the frog episode.
We gotta wait.
Yeah. I could have used it in the Cryptid Rain. It would have been, adjacent.
Yeah.
But I missed my opportunity.
Well, you gotta use it when the time is right, man.
Yeah. But Vessen reside in the more visible parts of the world as humans. But if they were more djinn-like, it would be closer to these Were-Crocodiles that stem from geology, these shrine entities. So it's not exactly a match, but the Grimm fairy tale show kind of gives us another variation of all these ontonic relations, all this presencing, all this strangeness.
Okay. My parents watch that. I've never actually watched Grimm.
Well, I'm trying to channel my childhood, and by childhood I mean last week I watched Grimm.
Our inner children live on the outside.
Yeah, I'd like to hang out with Rosalie and Monroe in their little Vesson apothecary. I think it'd be kind of a cool thing to do.
There you go.
Interviewees for this study used various words to describe the transformation from the verb suki, S-U-K-I, which means to put your shirt on, and the verb sukita, to take your shirt off. Reminds me of our skin.
Walkers.
Which are shape.
Shifters.
I just like making them do that. Here's the Merzes specifically on the shapeshift question. This is back to the Merz study. It's not totally evident, however, if shamans actually kanta, become animals. Despite these, the shamans do enter into some sort of ontonic engagement with other entities. Once they have returned to their human state, however, they then mediate and relate their experiences humans to humans. This is basic shamanistic kind of dealio.
Oh, yeah,
everywhere.
that's shamanism 101 right there.
Right. But the kanta means to become, but it's embedded in the word tikanta, which is body skins. So again, we're back to this whole
Skin
walker
thing.
Yeah, and we also have this becoming, which if you remember the trill we talked about with, not the trill from Jadzia Dax, the trill, which means troll, T-R-Y-L-L.
I was thinking Dax.
Yeah, I know. I know you were. So was I. But trill also means, to becoming. So a troll means to become and transform into something else, which is back to Nordic folklore, which was more of this sorcery kind of stuff.
Like how I have to get home before the sun comes up or I turn to stone.
Yes,
like that.
That's an ogre.
Yeah.
So, but anyway.
What'd you call me?
Well, that's the ones that turn to stone.
Oh.
Gur. Yeah.
Self-truth is important.
Yeah. But there also seems to be the same danger to your physical body if things go wrong. So if you're actually separating in your skin, your tacante is in danger while you're off gallivanting as a were-crocodile. It's the same as...
Well, yeah, the skin doesn't live without the spirit, right?
Yeah, it is an astral body thing. Like if you sever the silver cord, it's kind of a variation of that theme.
The soul leaves the body and can't get back. That's just death.
Well, the Merzes use the example captured by a witch, so you can run across other creatures out there, other entities you're presencing with as an onton, and you can get yourself into trouble.
Yeah, if you die in the game, you die for real.
Yes. But what isn't obvious is multi-witnesses reporting they saw were-crocodiles. These might exist, but sightings remain very individualistic and rare, or the Merzes just said, not totally evident if people become crocodiles. Again, certainly people can see who a shrine entity is poised as a crocodile, or who's a bush being, or who's a human in animal form. These are shamanic adjacent beings, diviners, those individuals who are familiar with these less visible parts of the world, but do they really turn into Were-Crocs? The Merzes too point at how it's kind of irrelevant if they do or don't, because the physical were creatures the villagers operate from within this framework is very real to them. Again, reminds us of the...
Yeah, overlaps a lot with stuff we've talked about before again with...
Yep.
Do they really physically turn? Do they... But yeah, like that tribe you talked about where... They lost the staff or whatever it was.
I don't know if we did that on a microphone, but basically this is Mircea Eliade, and he talks about this tribe that had a staff that was their axis mundi, and it was their connection between the upper world and the lower world. They physically thought the staff was the way. So when it broke, they all laid down as a group, and Jim Jones did. They just died.
Literally, they just stopped moving, sat down, and died.
Correct. Yeah.
Because the staff broke.
Yeah, that was taking things, again, too physically. They're messing up the myth for the fundamentalism,
but
basically.
It just shows the power of belief. If you believe it enough, you're going to make it real.
I do believe in fairies. I do. John Ross, that's why American Elves. I just read that up in the Flag Library. But Merz is quoting M.D. Jackson, who studied the Karanko tribe. If illusions have real and useful consequences, they are then truths. Same idea. The Bebelibe, shapeshifting, seems more akin to this astral ability because there's no mimesis medicines used, there's no power objects. I couldn't find anything about hallucinogens. So their life, because it's kind of like the self-generating shaman we were talking about with the Banj Akri episode, that they're the strongest ones that just kind of comes on them naturally. Sharon Merz cites M.D. Jackson, who described beings of power and their ability to shapeshift as coming from, quote, God-given endowment or inner faculty. Jackson was studying the Caranco of Sierra Leone when he said this, where those jaguar beings came from. That we had a dead end in Shapeshifter that I thought they were shamanic. This is the only lead I've since found that kind of leads back to the fact that they may really be were-jaguars.
There you go.
It's the same area of the world. Couldn't find it anywhere, but I think these could be definitely more
That's the Canaima,
along
right?
the same line.
The
The Sierra Leone is the altar god. They were the ones who dressed up as jaguars with metal steel and killed some of the people and colonists. They were fighting back. Ooh. There was an altar they found in the jungle, and I thought there was something more shapeshiftery going on than men dressing up with metal claws.
Right.
And this is the lead, because that same area, they're finding that there is an inner faculty that, maybe they believe it. So how
they
much
become the jaguar?
Yeah,
at least in their own mind.
Is this berserkery, or is this?
I was thinking berserkery.
I don't know where it ends. I think it gets more shapeshiftery, but I don't know that.
Well, to me, it's almost like the berserker thing taken to a whole new level.
Yeah.
It's the next level berserker.
Yeah.
You
2.0.
You're mixing the berserker with the skin.
Walker.
And making...
It's when you're mixing Chuck Norris with a bench Ockery blood. You're dipping him into
there you go. Same thing, yeah.
Yep. But shapeshifting, so again, community guardian shrines, the Atata, these special stones might be typically in crocodile or python form, but they sometimes shapeshift into human to interact with tribal members. Interviewing the Bebelibe, a farmer named Joel, I took out some of the Bebelibe words for you, or it's their language, Mbelime. But I did this again for sake of ease, but this is your fourth reading from the Merz study.
Crocodiles become kunta, human, so that they can go to markets and funeral celebrations. Crocodiles become humans. They become, and they even smoke cigarettes. You're in the market together, and you won't know that the human is a transformed crocodile. They circulate in the market and buy things to eat, but they're crocodiles. There are two bodies. When a crocodile wants to go to market, he takes his crocodile body off and buries it. Then he puts his human body on. A crocodile becomes kunta, human, and he takes his crocodile body and puts it in his hole by the river. He puts his human body on, Suki, and becomes so that he can go to market. As we're sitting here, he could arrive, and we could be talking, and you'll be wondering where he's come from. You'll see people you don't know in the market. Some will say they're from over there, indicates one direction. Others will say they're over there, indicates another direction. When they've actually come from the river that flows past your house. Buffaloes too become kunta, humans, and may pass in front of your house on the way to market, and you go to the market together. That's from Joel, the 30-year-old farmer. Several others also stated that such animals become human so that they can go to market and funeral celebrations. They also become human in order to visit people and ask for things, pose either as ferrymen or as passengers, then drown and eat you in the middle of the river, attend wrestling matches, go to town to seduce girls, and seek vengeance. They mix the really bad ones in between the
Well, back to what you wanting to be a ferryman, I think that does capture most of your activities on a given Saturday night.
I could totally dig being one of these dudes.
There you go. But that just kind of gives you an idea of the relationship of these shape-shifting crocodiles and some of the locals. Here's one that's hard to explain, though, because there was very little on actual Were-Crocodiles. However, this is one story which, again, gives you pause. A man goes hunting, I found this in the Merz study. A man goes hunting and shoots a buffalo, which turns out to be a dude. The buffalo shapeshifts back into a human form, stumbles home, bleeds out, while he's bleeding out, he tells his family the hunter's name who shot him before dying. The next day, the family goes after the hunter based on the Buffalo man's account.
Wow.
Yeah, makes him a Buffalo
soldier.
Thus a Neil
Jungian.
Very good. I didn't know it was going to work either.
Wow, I can't believe we really are starting to share a brain now.
There you go. Well, it's Kabotica and Matekame. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But you have to listen to us a lot to get these jokes, and once you get the jokes, you won't listen to us anymore. So that's the way. It's a double-edged sword kind of thing.
Yeah, it's weird. It's a cyclical thing.
Yeah, which never really comes back around.
It really just spirals down into nothing.
This is a different ontological whirlwind here we're on. But now we get into the mysterious world of the Bebelibe bush beings. I hung with some bush beings in college. They drank bush light sometimes as well. But here's Sharon Merz, and on these bush beings, the Siwayasi bush beings resemble humans, though they are a lot shorter and have long, thick hair. They primarily exist in the less visible parts of the world and act as intermediaries between Uwinoyu, God, and diviners. Diviners have clay statues of their Siwayasi. Their material presence, or equino, is the more visible parts of the world. They provide the diviner with a point of contact and help orientate the relationship, thus allowing for better communication. This means the Siwayasi can be simultaneously present in both the more and less visible parts of the world. Diviners activate, it's kind of like the Vesson, you're being seen by the humans and the Vesson. Diviners activate their transvisual powers when they pick up their divining staff and summon the Siwayasi. This then allows them to see the Siwayasi in the less visible parts of the world and speak directly with them. This does not mean that every stone is a shrine or shrine entity, though, but each stone has the potential of becoming one, as Johannes Merz explains. But the Siwayasi bush beings resemble the Banjakri of Nepal, those short, long, black-haired creatures running around.
Yeah, there you go.
And they're the intermediaries between the gods and the humans.
The little fuzzy guys.
Correct.
Everywhere has its little fuzzy guy, and they always have that same role. They're like the intermediary.
Well, not always.
You know?
I tried to find more teachers, and I think there's more to this, and I think they do teach, and I think we're going to get more and more into that.
Well, I mean, the teachers themselves are intermediaries, though, because they're channeling the spirit into the human. You know,
Right.
The spirit and the physical are connected through them.
Right. Most of the stories of these little people is they kidnap and kill you. So there is that piece.
Well,
of
there
it.
is that.
Yeah, there's that. But I think there's more to it. I'm with you.
It's the Pukwudgie thing, you know?
Yes, back to the Pukwudgies. We're going to figure out the Pukwudgie menace. But both are intermediary and teachers, and even physically, they seem to resemble each other. But they are once again between the deities and between the humans, which is where we find the monsters and the tricksters and the crossroads and all these other themes we keep coming across. I wonder if shrine entities would consider kidnapping to teach new initiates. They do have this arrangement wherein they tell the elders who the next conduit is going to be. So the totems themselves let the villagers know who the next priest or shaman is, the person they deem the best fit for the job. We want to work with Stan. I like Stan. This is the next guy.
That's the Banjakri again.
The Banjakri actually take you into the cave, and you have to become one of them.
Yeah.
This is more, but similar, where they just go, this is going to be the conduit. We're going to deal with you, and we'll relate messages that way. So it's similar, but not the same.
Okay.
But as stated, these shrine entities can manifest as animals, sometimes crocodiles or pythons, which are believed to be real beings that one can interact with. Of note, the Philippines is a place. These two totems act as scarecrows to ward off the malevolent aswang. Here's an authority on the subject from the Philippines, Maximus Ramos, and it's, I think, your last reading, Jeremy. This is from the Aswang Complex in Philippine Folklore by Maximus Ramos.
And you're doing an Aswang episode soon, aren't you?
Yeah, that's where this
So
spilled
this is kind
into
of a teaser?
This spilled into it a little.
Cool, all right. The gables of many a Philippine roof feature an ornamental sharp cone of tin. Though artistic effect of the ornament is undoubted, there is a possibility that its reputed virtue in keeping the Aswang creatures off the roof may have been a strong reason for its widespread use in the country. Another feature of many Felipe homes, especially among the more affluent in Mindanao, is the use of elaborately carved bean ends showing highly stylized, fierce-looking crocodiles and pythons. Look at that. My notes indicate that the ancient Filipinos regarded crocodiles and python as dragons and worshipped them. These types of house decor may therefore have started as protection against the aswang too.
So there you have another similarity where they're setting up the scarecrow. The owl on the roof to take care of the mice is actually scaring off the aswang, and we're back to pythons and crocodiles as the most important from the Philippines.
Crocodiles and pythons being considered as dragons and deities,
Yeah. I think more on the side trail for that, potentially. But Sharon Merz said somewhere, none of the interviewees claimed to be shapeshifters, but she thought some of them likely were. She suspected that some of the people she interviewed believed themselves to be shapeshifters.
The actual people she was talking to.
The actual interviewees for these questions, she thinks some of them might have been.
And excuse me, I dropped my glasses.
There you go. Now you can't see the rest of the...
Go.
But the crux being the inability to share a language with animals is the main hurdle to communication. So you can't always shoot the messenger kind of thing. But some interviewees do believe there is still a certain level of mutual comprehension between humanity and the animal kingdom. It's probably more telepathic or innate. But they tried to find out, how do you communicate with these things if they're a rock? I mean, you have to ask these
Help,
questions.
I'm a rock.
Yeah, exactly. There are some similarities to Indo-Burmese were-tigers. This from the Merzes again. Tiger men share a common kinship with the animal and have an animate relationship. It is part of the tiger men's destiny. They inherit the ability to body shift or soul transfer, as Highness described it, as their souls leave their human bodies whilst in a deep dream state and enter the bodies of tigers or leopards. Finally, tiger men suffer the same injuries as their tiger or leopards, which is the same as the werewolf folklore and everywhere else.
That whole astral projection element keeps coming up in this. Like, they're not sure if people actually turn into them or just like connect with them on a soulful level.
Yeah, Australian Dreamtime, take your pick. But if other people can sense that, it's still, he's in crocodile form.
And they come back and tell you the story of what just happened.
But again, the buffalo one he was a buffalo. Someone shot a buffalo, and it turned out to be a dude. Right. And those are the ones that I don't...
There's that fine line again where it's like, it almost depends on how powerful they are.
Yeah.
As far as whether they can full on change or not.
And since we shifted the python a little bit, I got to hail yig this one for Alex Bone. We have to have one Bebelibe python story because it was a cool one. But I'm just going to summarize it. This was Robert's story from the Merz study. Little python swings into Robert's room each night. Over time, it gets bigger and bigger. The snake would be seen swinging from the rafters and slithering around. One night, he neglects to look before jumping into bed, and the python ends up being his pillow. He screams. The family runs in. Daddy goes, "Oh, it's him." He mixes some flour and sorghum, and the snake disappears. So Robert's story in particular speaks to all the tensions within the ontological penumbra. Basically, it was his family totem. The Apanu, or modernity and Christianity, throw a further monkey wrench into this story. This dicey situation gets dicier. It freaked Robert out, but his father says it's just the family totem. But more than that, for Robert, it's his own true indictum or personal totem because they share Kabodika and Matakame, which is, again, this life force and this destiny mind spirit. This seems reminiscent of some shamanic initiation stuff, but Robert barely comes to terms with the cultural meaning of this giant slithering visitor. But then, post-catechism, he is told by Catholic priests this is likely the serpent from the Garden of Eden trying to trick him, the prince of lies. Yeah. So he's lost in this his own ontological cultural penumbra. He eventually chooses to break away from the old traditions, even if it costs him his life.
And it will when the skin
walker
comes after you for breaking your traditions, because that's what they do.
Yeah, Robert. But here's Sharon Merz on this. Robert's totemic relationship cannot be reduced to a metaphor. Their shared ontology goes beyond that of many other individuals, as they have the same reincarnating ancestor and therefore the same Kabodika and Matakame. Robert thus primarily draws on an ontonic presencing practice, just as I do when I engage with Johannes when he is materially present. Should Robert body shift, he could further enhance his ontonic experience by encountering his python as a fellow python. Robert's becoming a Christian, however, added another layer of complexity to his animate relationship, as his fear of pythons not only returned, but also was heightened because he started to associate them with evil. Now, what happened with Robert is he doesn't die, but he does get very anxious and nervous, and it's a terrible breakup process.
Yeah, that's deep. I'm gonna make a note for the side trail on that.
There you go. But I feel that the Merz's approach would be helpful when exploring a lot of these other tribes, a lot of these other monsters we're going to be coming across in shapeshift form. What are the implications for other areas? How can this approach be reutilized when dealing with other tribes? Whereas Western anthropologists may be seeing a person in the corner of the room, a medium or a cat, or even a person from the same tribe may truly experience a crocodile standing in the corner of the room. There's even some evidence scully-muggles will willfully avoid seeing the crocodile. We'll talk about that someday, I'm sure. It's the reverse scully-muggle effect where they have the power. And the reason I say that is because they have studies where, with guess the coin, scully-muggles can actually reverse it and do worse than average just by not wanting. It's just like with Terry Gross we talked about last week, didn't understand about frog rain at all. It's like, stop talking, I don't know what you're saying.
Wow, so it's like they so don't want to be psychic
they're
that
reverse
they get
psychic.
worse than
they're psychic reverse. They're psychic
Wow.
adjacent. Yeah, in the wrong direction.
worse than baseline of just guessing.
Yeah. Yep.
That's crazy. They're almost proving the point by trying so hard
Correct.
not to.
Correct. And we'll talk about that someday. We
That's
have to have a
funny.
Skeptico one of these days. Best defense, though, against Were-Crocodiles, leave them alone. They like to party. They like the ladies and cigarettes. If you leave them alone, they'll leave you alone.
I know what I would bring.
What?
I would bring cocaine hippos.
You don't get to go first. Well, all right, do explain this now.
What's his name? The drug czar down in Colombia.
Oh, the cocaine hippo guy. Yeah.
The cocaine guy that had all the hippos.
Estebar.
There you go. Yeah. Go get those hippos. Give them the cocaine.
So you're
And
making
then drop 'em in
cocaine
again.
bear, and
Cocaine
you're making
hippo.
hippos
I'm going to send cocaine hippos
You
against
are-
the Were-Crocs.
onto drugological penumbra. You're in between movies, and you're in between animals,
Yeah.
and you're harnessing them for evil. That's really disturbing.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. That's what I was going for. That's what I was going for.
I don't know what I'm hearing. But anyway, back to reality. That is interesting. Maybe for the side trail.
We'll
I'll
talk
have
more
to
on
wrap,
the side
I'll
trail.
have to wrap my head around this. But I have my dream team picked out. I'm taking the ontonic pairing of two greats. From ancestral beings, I'm going with the energy of the late great crocodile hunter, Steve Irwin. But he will be ontically paired with Paul Hogan's Crocodile Dundee to create a super crocodile hunter with amazing kind of accent thing going on.
That's cool.
Together, like, the Bruce Lee of Croc Warriors.
There you go. There you go.
And do you have anything? Well, your cocaine hippo wins.
Oh, yeah, cocaine hippos.
I don't know what to say about that, but anyway.
More in the side
you don't
trail
even
about
think
why that
about
works.
things and you say brilliant things. It's a flow thing. You're in the Tao. You're in the Tao at all times, or something.
I've been in a flow state for quite some time.
Yeah.
I break, I fall out of it sometimes, but generally speaking,
Yeah, I have to say
just
that.
kind of live in a constant state of flow.
I do have to say, and we're going to start our Ahu Guano theory of the week.
Oh no, here it comes! Quick, to the batshit signal!
I think your cocaine hippo is just so crazy that is also our Ahu Guano file today, and I'm going to skip that. Dang. It
Nice.
was brilliant, and I don't understand it. And I still, we're going to have to break it down until... I got to have to read more Heidegger before I figure out what you were talking about. But now we're going to jump to Sir Richard Scully-Muggles.
Wait, so there's no Ahu Guano?
You just...
Cocaine hippos.
Cocaine hippos. How do you...
right,
where
fair.
do you go from there?
Okay.
Where do you go from
And
there?
that's the craziest thing I can think of.
Yeah.
Yeah. Ahu Guano, hold on. Batshit theory on the Were-Crocs thing. Just real quick, I say it a lot. Everything's just one thing. The rocks can turn into crocs. The people can turn into crocs. The crocs can turn into people and rocks. Everything's just one thing. We're all one thing. And once you realize it, you can be whatever you want. How's that for an Ahu Guano?
Right. I think that's, I don't know how you
And done.
And done.
Sir Richard Scully Muggle, Skeptics Review.
You're full of crap, and that's the nicest thing that I can say.
There's one tale circulating around the Bebelibe community about a woman who gave birth to crocodile children because she mistakenly ate her family totem crocodile. These hybrid children apparently did not survive long after birth and were hastily buried. Turns out during the Merz interview, a sister of basically the siblings who passed and were she says they were not crocodiles. They were just premature or whatever went wrong with the birthing process.
Deformed.
So we have or potentially do. She said they came out normal. I think the sister said they came out normal. So it was just basically them explaining it.
Okay.
But this is if we didn't have the sister who happened to be interviewed by the Merzes, we would have went crocodile babies, and that's another example. The only example of any multiple people agreeing is the guy goes out and shoots a buffalo. It turns out to be a guy who comes back home and tells everyone, go get that guy because he just shot me.
Right.
That's the only one. The Were-Crocodile babies was debunked because they interviewed the sister, said no, they died at birth.
So you're saying from the skeptics' angle that it's really just all in their heads. It's not an actual physical manifestation of someone turning into a crocodile.
That's what the Scully Muggles would be saying.
Just the people there believed that they were communing with the crocodile.
Right. But Sharon Merz, I'm going to leave this with her a little bit, and this is again from her study, and a quote, "In a similar vein, it's the ontological character of myths that I consider important. It's not a question of whether the myths are factually true or not, but how they inventively help people to define and understand the relationships they have with others." We could say other entities. She adds, ... Myths can thus be considered veracious, as they help provide people with the means to deal with ambiguity and thereby negotiate the ontological penumbras they encounter. So these dark places of in-between, people are trying to figure out. Yeah, exactly. Scully Mulder believability scale. They feel your methods, your theories are
Spooky? Do you think I'm spooky?
Wait, why am I Scully? I'm just going to break it up into two things. Real Were-Crocs, or a group of folks who are definitely in tune with each other and understand that different things are happening, and they're engaging with these ontonic, and they have these relationships with what are very important beings for them that others can perceive. I would say the Were-Crocodile thing, I am only down to a 2 because there wasn't much actual proof. But I think it's a 9 that these folks share an ontonic engagement with other things, and I believe that even they know when they're in another state and they're dealing with something. It's not just totally individualistic. It does spill out into community-wide engagement with other entities.
I give the benefit of the doubt to the whole shape-shifting thing in a way. I can't, I don't go too high, but I'm kind of right in the middle on that whole thing. But yeah, like you said, in this one specifically, it kept coming up that they don't necessarily physically turn into it. They just have that, astral projection sort of soulful bonding sort of thing going on where they're communing with the animal. Right. Like a beast mastery thing. They maybe even like seeing through its eyes, experiencing what it's experiencing.
Well, that's happening, you're saying.
Right. And then they can report on it when they come back out of that state. But it's almost like an astral projection thing rather than a physical form
and
change.
Shamanic variation. Same idea.
And like you said, there was the one exception with the buffalo guy, but he wasn't a crocodile, he was a buffalo.
Well, we did have 7 different types of shapeshifters, from pythons to crocodiles are the soul of this community, but we came across paddis monkeys, warthogs, pythons. There was definitely a variety.
Yeah, and I'm with you on the, I'm 9, maybe even 10 on the fact that people can believe, especially as a group, people can believe things into reality, at least for themselves.
Yeah.
I'm a 10 on that. I'm going to give it a 5 on the actual potentially changing forms like that.
Let me ask you more specifically then. Man enters room.
Yeah.
And you enter a room, and the person in the corner is actually channeling their Were-Crocodile and is standing in the corner. Do you believe other tribal members can know that that's happening and perceive that person as a crocodile?
I'm just going to say this and be out, but this is where I stand on this sort of thing. I once met Coyote in human form. Coyote with a capital C, in human form. I'm not telling that story.
Dang.
But it happened. So yeah, I believe that.
Well, there's your us file you threw in there.
But then something happened. It happened to me.
Yeah, there you
just
go.
Dropped a little shape-shifting bomb at the end of my episode.
Yep.
And you're never going to talk about this?
Not in public, no. That's not a public story.
Wow. Well, awesome, dude.
It's not.
I know. It had meaning for you, and it doesn't translate well, which is what we're talking about. It's what we're talking about. It doesn't translate well.
Right.
So, well done, though, sir.
No.
Wolfman Puck.
Oh, good. I'm hungry. Wolfman Puck's Cryptid Culinary Corner.
Your entree, sir. Oh, smells good.
Mine's real quick. Making gator potato stew. Served with locally brewed sorghum beer, which is that stuff they chased it away. You can actually ferment that and make a beer out of it.
You got to put a little flour in there to thicken and mix with the sorghum to scare them away.
Going to be a warning label, though, for people who think it's their totem animal. I don't want to get people sick or kill them with my food because I just opened this little restaurant. And if there's any crocodiles in the canal behind it, I'm going to let them be. I'm going to let them do their thing.
This is kind of a dangerous one in my mind. Because if you eat these things, they might come back and get you.
It would definitely the wild ass or donkey.
But it almost seems like any of them. Because the crocodile to begin with is filled with a vengeful spirit, right?
Well, Emile the baker died shortly after having a crocodile shot.
There you go.
So there's your example there. Or they go home half alive and warn their family member, if it is a human, to say, get Jeremy, because
here's what I'm going to do. All right, if we're going to go in, we're going to go all in, right? And this is for the cryptids anyway, so they're probably not scared. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a mixed cryptid sausage. I'm going to use the python skin and stuff it with crocodile and wild ass and cocaine hippo and all these other things. I'm going to grind them all up together, put in some spices, little sorghum maybe, stuff it in that python skin and make sausages.
Wow.
And I'm just going to boil them up with some potatoes.
But they are cocaine sausages.
There's going to be a trace of cocaine in there from the hippos.
There you go. Wow.
Just enough to, make you enjoy the meal a little bit more.
It's kind of like just having an espresso with dessert afterwards.
Yeah, there you go. Just like a chocolate-covered espresso bean level of cocaine.
There you go.
And let's see, what are we drinking? Yeah, that's a tough one. Holy water, maybe? Ward off the spirits.
There you go.
I'm going to drink holy water with that.
Got to bring Catholicism back in. We were on such a roll.
Yeah. Well, it was mixed in there a little bit. It's part of the reason shamanism is dying in the world, right?
Oh, yeah.
I don't want to go pointing fingers or nothing, but pointing a finger. Right?
Well, Robert's story really captured that old world, new world moment where this guy meets his family totem. It's hanging around the house. He actually starts equating it with the serpent from the Garden of Eden and wants nothing to do with it. And the ancestral spirit essentially slithers away with its head hung low.
Yeah, that finger's been pointing since you first said that. That came into my brain then.
It's an interesting complexity from culture to culture, from totem to totem, from human to totem.
Wow.
And that's what I got today.
All right. And the side trail, we're going to get a little deeper into some aspects of this.
Well, I'd like to just, it needs a little time to maybe, it's the first time you're hearing any of this. So if you have any final questions, and yes, I want to talk a little bit more about skin changing and all that good stuff.
I did take some notes as instructed. So we're going to get a little deeper into the philosophical, metaphysical, and whatnot kind of side with some more free-form conversation about this in the side trail.
This is the only time I asked them to actually pay attention. Most of the time, I'm just like, dude,
we'll see how well it worked.
Yeah. Cocaine hippo, gee whiz.
Yeah. Anything else to add or subvert before we go?
Just all.
And go. All right. Thanks for coming, everybody. Just real quick, you can join our Patreon for just $1 a month at patreon.com/monsterlore tour. Get early access to all the episodes along with their connected side trails. They come out together in the member section, so you don't have to wait for the side trail compilations. And again, if you could just take a quick minute to hit the happy fun buttons, maybe give us a rating and review, always greatly appreciated. We thank you much. And we will see you next time here on the Monster Lore Tour. Until then, have a good one, listener. Monster Lore Tour Podcast.
We can do where.
Where?
No, you're supposed to say wolf.
Oh.
You get to what we're doing now? Where.
I thought it would have been Croc.
Dial. Drock. Yeah, we struggled
Edit.
there.